and welcome to Stunt Flyer Video Magazine. The airplane I'm wiping the dust off of here is one of the most famous airplanes in the world of stunt. This is the legendary Tucker 4. There is only one example of this airplane that had ever been built, and this is it. This is the one that Gary Zeller from the St. Louis area campaigned in the 1962-1963 time frame. This airplane was designed by Bob Tucker, who you may remember as the designer of the famous Tucker Special series of airplanes. I built a Tucker Special a few years back, and it was one of the most enjoyable airplanes I've ever had to both build and fly. It was very well engineered, very well thought out, very easy to construct, and it flew as well as any airplane I've ever owned. And I understand that the Tucker 4 was actually an improvement on that very great design. Now, Gary is no longer with us, the gentleman who piloted this airplane. He succumbed to a very serious spinal injury and illness, and he passed away a few years back. And I had been corresponding with Gary over the years and talking about the Tuckers, and I had actually watched Gary fly in 1961. He was the Air Youth State Champion from Missouri, and I watched him fly at the Nationals in Willow Grove. And at that point in time, he was flying a Tucker Special. This was the airplane he campaigned right after that, and I had talked to him on many occasions, and we exchanged letters talking about the Tucker 4 and how well he liked it. When he passed away, his mom Marge and his dad Lou Zeller brought this airplane to me at the team selections in Muncie. That was 4 years ago. And I had promised to get this airplane refinished and get it on display, hopefully, at the AMA Museum in memory of Gary and in honor of Bob Tucker, the designer. Now, I wanted to make sure that I did a good job on this airplane, and so I haven't started it until now because I haven't really had time getting the new video business started and so forth. But now it's time to bring this airplane back to pristine condition. And what I'm going to do here in Stunt Flyer Video Magazine is to give you progress reports as we go along. Now, this is going to be a fairly long process because the silk span on this airplane is so brittle from age, and I had hoped to just be able to resand the airplane and just repaint it. But the silk span, as you probably can see here, is breaking, and every time I touch it, I put another hole in it, unfortunately. And there are several areas that are damaged and need some repair, just from a hanger rash, that I've decided to strip this airplane entirely down, right back to bare wood, and then document it and make plans available for it. And I have Bob Tucker's blessings to do that, and they will appear in Flying Models magazine when we're finished. And hopefully even build a new version of it, a replica, to fly at the VSC in the next couple of years. Now, that's a tall order, but we're going to try to achieve that goal in the next few months. And of course, if AMA does accept this, and I'm pretty sure they will, as a museum piece, then all of you can go and see this legendary airplane in person at Muncie. So later on in this issue, we're going to give you a little progress report and explain the procedures for going forward and documenting and rebuilding this airplane. But first, we're going to go to Brodak's fly-in from 1998 and show you some of the airplanes and talk to some of the pilots and hopefully whet your appetite for the fly-in that's coming up this year. Now, June 18th, 19th, and 20th, that's Father's Day weekend of 1999, are the dates for the Brodak fly-in. Last year we had 196 entrants at that contest, and this year we're expecting many more. So we've gone to a 3-day format this year. It'll be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, with competition on all 3 days, although there will be a lot of practice circles open on Friday, and you can even come as early as Thursday and practice on the field. And for that reason, that there's going to be a lot of entrants, we've asked that everyone send in an advanced entry form. Now, they're available from Brodak Manufacturing, And they're also available through the next issue of Stunt News. There'll be a application in there, or a blank that you can fill out. So please come and be with us and enjoy the contest. It was a wonderful meet the last 2 years, and I'm sure if we get the weather we've had the last 2 years, it'll be a wonderful meet again. After that, we're going to come right back here where we're going to get back into the Project Europa. Now, we left off with the blocks fully hollowed, and it was time to install the wing. And that's where we're at in this issue. We're going to install the wing into the Project Europa airplane. Now, we did not show the construction of the wing in this series because that's going to be covered in a feature video on lost foam wing construction. But we will touch on some of the features of that lost foam wing construction because it relates directly to how we align the wing in the fuselage in this series. So we're going to take some time to explain the importance of accuracy, and we're going to take some time to show how to align your airplane absolutely perfectly. I believe the three most important characteristics in stunt flying, or stunt flying model, are lightweight, accuracy, and power. And of those three things, the most important in my mind is accuracy. Because while an airplane may be heavy, you can sort of fly around that with a little bit more power and maybe longer lines and flying at a little higher airspeed, so forth and so on. And certainly power you can always get more by adding nitro or hopping up the motor. But alignment, if your airplane is misaligned, there's no way to fix it except to cut into it and move things around. And certainly no one wants to cut into a beautiful finish once it's applied to the airplane. So we're going to hopefully show you some techniques that will ensure that your airplane comes off the board ready to fly perfectly with no trim adjustments required except for maybe a minor flap tweak here or there and maybe some lead out or tip weight adjustments. But the airplane will turn equally and will fly level, not in a tail down or tail high attitude like we see so many airplanes do. And hopefully again we can achieve that goal with this series. So let's get to it. We have a long way to go, as we always do, and I hope you enjoy it. If you're a stunt flyer, the place to be on Father's Day weekend for the past 2 years has been Carmichael's, Pennsylvania. The home flying field of John Brodak is much like the baseball diamond in the movie Field of Dreams, and just as magically as the famous ball players from the past materialize there, so do legends from stunts past and future appear at John's backyard aerodrome to celebrate the beginning of a new season of competition flying. But this is more than just a contest. It is a place where modelers of all levels of skill and experience can gather to enjoy each other's company, share ideas, and help one another in an atmosphere of pure flying fun. They fly models constructed from the outstanding Brodak kits, famous designs from stunts past, and beautiful original creations. Now, let's meet some of the entrants who attended last year's gathering and listen as they explain the details of their models.
Hi, I'm Watt Moore. I live in Rock Hill, South Carolina. I have a Brodak Nobler that I built this past winter and spring. I built it primarily to replace one that I had built previously in 1975-76 time frame. That one really wasn't a very good plane, and this one I think is much better. What I have on here is a double star 40 that I got from Tom Dixon. The plane is of course a Nobler, and it came from Brodak, the Brodak kit, which we like to promote Brodak products. and they're very good to us. And we happen to be here at Brodak's Father's Day weekend, 1998, and we're enjoying it very much.
My name is Jack Petrolia. I'm from Massachusetts. I fly in District 1, the New England Stunt Team. Dave Cook and all those guys up that way. We have a good time up there. I started flying about when I was 50 years old. I'm 70 now, and I'm having a great time. I built this last winter because there are upcoming contests that are having profile events. So I just took the regular Ares plan. It's exactly the same, excepting that I just put the profile fuselage on it, and the tail is all sheet balsa. It's covered with silk. It's painted with SIG dope. I didn't do a rub job. I just got 6 coats of clear over the dope. I've got diamonds on the bottom of it too, so it'll look different when you go over in the wing over. It has a stock OS 35, but I've got an OS 46 needle valve because I could get a little better tuning with that needle valve than I could with the regular one. It's got a 4-ounce tank, which I made myself, and it's embedded into the fuselage. All the way, it touches the doubler on the other side. I put oversized wheels and wheel fairings because I fly on the grass a lot, and some of the events are flown on grass too, and it helps the takeoffs and the landing.
Hi, I'm Tom Hampshire. I'm a New Jersey area flyer. Been at it for a long time, sometimes real well, sometimes not so good. That's the way it goes. This is a Jersey, and it's been around. This particular airplane's about 6 years old now. It was built for the 92 Nats. Flew there and lost the front end, but we've repaired it, and it has now got about 300 flights on it. If you look close, you'll see. It's a little shop-worn, still flies very well. It was John DeTavio's 1961 Stunter, built after the Falcons. Then this was an airplane that John only built one of. He campaigned it actively in the Northeast from about 1961 to 1968 or 69. That one airplane, it was refinished 3 or 4 times as far as I know. Ask Tom Niebuhr, he can give it to you chapter and verse. Very, very far ahead of its time. The moments were longer than you'd expect. I don't know, that could have been from the Shark, or it could have been from John's own knowledge. As its appearance suggests, it's a very, very smooth, very graceful stunter. It presents beautifully, but you're going to get hurt with it in terms of the corner. You won't find that you're going to out-corner the modern stuff with especially the larger control surfaces. They do have more punch than this. The front end is a joy to handle. As you can see, it's an upright engine, and it's a takeoff on a V12 or V18 powered air racer. It means you have an upright engine to deal with in the pits and at starting time. So this airplane hadn't been flown since about last July or August. I can't remember when. The engine had been oiled, wrapped in a rag, and put away. I got it down off the wall, brought it out to Brodak's, and so far today I've flown it twice and flipped it twice. It's a joy to handle an upright engine. It's so easy, so clean. The powertrain is an HP40. This particular one was set up by Randy Smith, but Randy has been a great help to me and a great friend. If you ask him what he does, you're not going to get a lot of mumbo jumbo, no black magic. He'll tell you exactly what he does, and he's happy to teach you the pros and cons of his art. So I have since built 3 other HPs for myself and other fellas to Randy's print. They work the same way. His technology works. It's repeatable. Recommend it highly. It's a real nice stunt motor. It drags it along at a nice, stately, steady pace.
Hello, my name is Steve Bittner. I'm from Glen Burnie, Maryland. I've been modeling airplanes. I started when I was about 7 or 8 years old with my dad. Started with free flight. Went into the usual control line and control line stunt. Later on, we got into radio control airplanes until approximately 1980. I dropped out with the passing away of my father. And this past year, I just started getting back into it because another friend of mine who I admired very much, by the Hank Spielman, used to watch him fly, and he passed away. I've now acquired a couple of his airplanes, The Stuka I have in my hand has a lot of history to it. It was built by Hank in 1960. It's a high Johnson version with a gull wing. Has a Johnson 35 in it. Henry went to the Nationals in '61, as you know, Bob. Bob was also there to watch it fly along with myself. I flew junior stunt at that Nationals at Willow Grove. We all watched Henry fly his high-speed 90-mile-an-hour high-aspect plane. Unfortunately, he did end up crashing it, and he flew this Stuka I have in my hand today. After the Nationals, he took the airplane home and it sat in the rafters and it was never flown again. So I acquired the airplane. It's perfectly the way he left it. I haven't done anything with it. We've been flying it. It's a good old plane and we just wanted people to see a piece of history.
Hi, I'm Chip Largent from Virginia Beach, Virginia. I fly with the Norfolk Aeromodelers down there. What I've got here is a kind of a combination of ideas from different sources to put together kind of a quasi-self-design of a Tucano, the Brazilian design aircraft used by the Brits and a few others as far as their training squadrons. This is a combination of essentially a nobler wing, which is a slight variation on what John Brodak has been using in the Warbird series, and the fuselage and tail feathers are adapted from a design from a British model airplane magazine of a few years back. I had to make a few modifications in the tail surface just to get the area and the control, but it's essentially a Warbird. It's powered by a Tower 40. Been reworked. Mike Garman and I reworked the engine to adjust the timing to give it a little more of the stunt quality that we like without the runaround. And the economy of the engine is fantastic. Find that anywhere from 3 to 3.5 ounces will take care of the pattern, so we have to be careful on overruns with this particular one. We're very basic in the Tidewater area in our construction. This is a monocoat finish on the wings and Rust-Oleum on the fuselage and tail surfaces. We found that certain of the colors of the Rust-Oleum match up pretty close with the monocoat, and it's not too difficult to kind of feather them together and come up with a reasonably decent aircraft. This has only flown a few times. It had its maiden flight about 3 weeks ago. Had to have some trimming. I'll have to make an adjustment here in the nose to fill in the space there, because to lighten it, extended the engine out and put a tongue muffler on, so I took a few ounces off the weight, but I put a filler in there just to make it look pretty. And that's about it. It flies fine, and it's been a real joy to have out there in the circle.
Hi, my name is Kevin Stewart. I'm from Rock Hill, South Carolina. This particular plane I'm holding is a built-up Oriental. It's made by Brodak. The engine that it has in it is a Double Star 40, which is a Russian imported engine by Tom Dixon. I've been flying roughly for about 2.5 years, and I fly intermediate. I fly the full pattern. I fly old time. I fly classic, and I fly profile. And the last contest that I went to, I took 2nd place in the intermediate pattern. And basically, this plane looks weird because at that contest, even though the plane did cut off and inverted, I was still able to catch a 2nd place score because my first round score was so high. But basically what this plane is it's a built-up Oriental, like I said before. I made everything associated with the engine and the fuel system accessible with the fuel hatch and the cowling right here. They're both movable. Basically, this plane is a good flying plane. The way Brodak has it set up for the controls is pretty good. It'll do everything in the pattern. And that's about it.
Hi, my name's Scott Seiler. I'm from Tower City, Pennsylvania. I've been flying Stunt. This is my 4th year now. This particular airplane I have right here is a Randy Smith design. It's a Dreadnought. It's powered by a Tomley 60 Super Tiger. This is actually the 2nd build-up airplane that I've owned, and the airplane is built strictly to plans. There's nothing been modified on it, and I find the airplane to be an excellent flying airplane. That's all I got to say.
My name is Mike Alamov. I'm from the Republic of Uzbekistan, which is the south of the former Soviet Union. And this is my airplane, Tucker Special. I built it for classic event, for participating in classic. Mostly because I just like the shape. I think it's a nice design. And I was told by several people it's also a good flying airplane. This is a built-up balsa D-tube. There is nothing special about the technology, pretty much standard. Medium density wood. And another reason why I built this is because I wanted to learn finishing techniques from Les Nearing. I'm pretty sure many people know Les as an outstanding finisher. And this is actually the first airplane that I built and finished with the paper and dope technology. I was mostly using shrinking covering before, like a monocoat, and I think it was the time to go up. I got advanced by Bob Hunt, by the way, into advanced class, and I think it was a good experience for me to finish it with a paper and dope. I think it came out well. Also, it's a good flying airplane, came out at 42 ounces, and it's powered by standard OS 40 FP engine, stock. It develops decent power for the airplane, and I just finished the pattern, first round, flying well. I didn't have a chance to make wheel pans for it, so I got wheel doors, but I guess that's fine. Everybody likes the paint scheme. I thought the finishing job wouldn't be good, so I decided to make it bright, to stand up in the air and hide some little things that I did wrong. But I guess it came out all right. The only modifications that I made to the design is I did the adjustable lead outs. I also have adjustable tip weight on adjustable horn, and some of the sizes inside the fuselage are smaller than the original, just to use less wood for that. Everything else is stock. I'm using plastic spinner for CG. That's about it.
Hi, I'm Jeff Kemp from Newark, Ohio, which is about 50 miles east of Columbus, part of the Capital City Control Liner Group. We're out here in full force today. And you caught me at a time when I just finished my beginner's pattern here at the Brodak flying. Had a great time. The airplane performed fairly well. I was pretty nervous, but we got through it just fine. The airplane I'm flying is a 1932 R2, designed by the Granville brothers back in, like I said, the early 30s. It's actually designed for racing, Thompson Trophy Bendix Racing. And I always loved the profile of the GB, but didn't know if it'd make a nice stunt ship. Came across an article by Pat Johnson, and here he's flying an advanced stunt. So I figured if he can fly an advanced stunt, I ought to be able to handle it in beginners. So I gave Pat a call, let him know who I was, told him that I already started a wing construction for a twister, and he says that twister ring will work great in your GB. So we went ahead and finished it. I'm running an OS 40 on it with the muffler. The engine's been reworked, so I get a little bit better run, which I'm very happy that it does run very well. The airplane, although you can see has a profile configuration, it actually is a built-up fuselage from here back. It's completely built up with the stringers and the bulkheads, and that was because the massive fuselage, we had to take some weight off. So by eliminating all the solid and going with the build-up, we've done that. So we've still maintained a good groove. We're just dialing in good square corners now, so hopefully it'll just continue to be a good flying plane, and I'll learn and enjoy the sport more than anything here in the future.
Hi, my name's Dan Banjak. I'm part of the Philly Flyers group out here at Brodak's contest. Tell you a little bit about the airplane here. It's a Dave Hemstrut PT-19, powered Fox 35. Little history on this bird. I built it in 1985, sold it in 1988, and about 3 to 4 weeks ago bought it back from the guy I sold it to. Airplane still flies pretty good. A little rough in the wind, but maybe we'll get a better engine on it. Might do just a little better. I think this was my first scratch-built full-body aircraft. so there's a little sentimental value to her for me. I guess that's about it. Fantastic time out here, and can't wait to get more flying done today.
Hello, I'm John Sunderland, or Jack as some people call me, from Columbus, Ohio, and this is my son John. I've got my Hawker Hunter here that I designed back in 1966, and this is a replica of the original. The predecessor to this model was basically had nobler moments, and back in those days I was impressed with Lou McFarlane's Shark, so I extended the moments on it, put some swept tips and that sort of thing. The model is powered by a Tower 40. It's been reworked by Mike Couts, retimed. Let's see, it's, the finish is SIG, and there's carbon matte on the balsa surfaces, all the balsa surfaces, and the open bays are covered with light silk span. It's got about, I'd say, 3 coats of color or thin coats, and about 3 coats of clear rubbed out. I really like the carbon matte. It builds a real nice light model. It weighs about 42 ounces. It's a 54-inch wingspan. Moments about 9-inch nose moment. Tail moment's about 15.5, something like that. My son John here remembered the original model when he was younger, and it was a big help to me in reconstructing it. I had several photographs that some friends had taken back then and were kind enough to send to me, and so here it is. It's a good flyer. You'll notice it's a centerline type design. Back in those days I built a larger stab. Most of the models were smaller, had smaller stabs, but I built it larger, and I think it had an advantage, and it was a good flyer. Stabs on this, or the flaps on this model are built up.
3/4 inch flaps.
3/4 inch flaps.
3/4 size.
Right, yeah. And we're using a Zinger 12.5. Starts out at around 8400, 83, somewhere in that neighborhood. It's got at this point about 20 flights on it, something like that. And real happy with the model, and I hope to take it to the Nats this year, and if it's not too windy, I hope to do well with it.
Hi, I'm Christian Saunders. I'm 13 and I live in New Jersey. I belong to the Phillies Flyers Club, and I'm flying my Tomahawk, and it's a Novus 30 engine that's in it, and I'm here at Brodak having a good time.
John Brodak and special guest George Aldrich introduced the new line of Brodak flight streaks at the 1998 flying.
Well, this is a basic design that I did in 1956 called the Flight Streak. I took time out from the development work on this to write the stunt pattern in 2 nights up till 2 o'clock in the morning. And we took the first model out to a cow pasture where I flew free flight and did 1 test flight, and I went home. I knew that the little narrow elevator would work, and I shifted the wing forward 1 inch in the fuselage and set the plans to top flight, and then I built one. Built another with a different thing, and it flew even better. That was 42 years ago, and now John Brodak has decided to kit them again. This time we kitted them with the original construction. They'll build considerably lighter and fly even better. So if you ever built one of the original Flight Streaks, you'll love these because they'll fly so much better. They're lighter.
I'm very proud to manufacture this family of Flight Streaks of George's. When George sent the plans up to me, we wanted to make some changes, and George said, no, I want these kitted exactly the way I designed them. And when I did do the way George wanted them, and I started building the planes, I found out how easy they went together. And with the I-beam, the way George designed that I-beam, it just fit perfect, the ribs fit perfect. And I called George up and said, you know what, George, you really know what you're doing. So I'm very proud of these 4 kits.
One thing about the model here is it will give us back a control line model with a solid wing trainer. When I did that model, it was about 1962. We took it down to a church picnic, and I flew it 1 flight and even did a loop with it the first flight, and we packed it up and sent it to top flight. And it's designed for the kid to be able to fly it and hit the ground, and with the super glues we've got now, put it right back together and be back in the air in 5 minutes. So we've got a trainer out that the kids can learn to fly on. Anybody can. It doesn't be a kid. It can be a 40-year-old kid and he can learn to fly on it.
Appearance point judging for the Pampa classes was done Nat style on Saturday evening. This really added a big contest feel to the weekend.
Well, hello there, Bob. This is Jerry Phelps. I've got a new airplane this year for the competition, hopefully. Hopefully it works out. Got about 20 flights on it. This is a Randy Smith design. It's an Intrepid. Has an SV11 wing in it for the build-up ribs. Went together really nice. I've been working on it really off and on for the past 2 winter seasons and just finished it here a couple of months ago. So far it's working out pretty well. I've got a PA-51 in it. It's running pretty good. Had a problem with the tank last night, but we got that repaired. I've been doing a little experimenting with the props. Haven't really honed in on where I'll probably end up yet, but we're working on it. Real happy with it. Like to thank Randy Smith for a good design. I'm happy with it.
Hi, Bob McDonald. I'm here at the Brodeck contest. Got my new bird with me, which is called Miss Mopar, which is pretty obvious by the Dodge supposed sponsorship. The idea was to make this look like an unlimited racer. This is not the airplane I'm flying here. This is brand new. Obviously, if you look at it, you kind of notice that it looks an awful lot like a P-47 with a different rudder, because it is. Molded fuselage, lost foam wing. Weighs 57 ounces with a PA-61 in it. Unique features of the finish, it's standard dope finish underneath, body's covered with carbon veil and 1 coat of hobby epoxy, sanded and then normal finishing techniques. Colors are Deltron, which is an automotive product, 2 coats of Del Glow clear on top, rubbed out. The nice thing about Del Glow is I can paint it and 2 days later rub it to what you see here. The whole thing weighs 57 ounces. It's around 720 square inches. So far, flies great. I'm real happy with it. Other unique features, I've got some removable landing gears. All the controls are adjustable in one way or another. Bottom paint job's probably nicer than the top, quite frankly. Got the big Dodge sponsor on the bottom. And so far, this looks like a real winner.
Hi, I'm John Saunders. I'm 42 years old. I'm from Newfield, New Jersey. I'm flying a Buccaneer 740 with a Super Tiger 46 in it. I've been flying stunt for approximately 15, 20 years, and I'm flying expert today. And hopefully I'll get a flight pretty soon.
Hello, my name's Wayne Triven. I'm from Lake Worth, Florida, here at the 98 Brodeck contest. This is my Heinkel HE-111 profile stunt ship, also fun scale if need be. Basically it's powered by two Magnum 28s. Originally it had Vico 19s, so it was a little bit on the light side. Just you had to really tweak the engines out to really get it to perform. With the Magnum 28s, it performs exceptionally well. Impressive in flight. I feel it's worth about 10 extra points to the judges hearing the twin sounds of these engines. I was looking for something unique in profile scale. The P-38's been overdone, Black Widow, Mosquito, and looking through my old magazines and documentation, I found the Heinkel HE-111. Basically, I took some data from the Skydancer, which has a very similar tapered wing, trying to figure out where CG location, what have you. The airfoil is basically the SV11. However, it's been tapered down or scaled down on the outside panels. Inside panels retain #1 rib, but each successive panel is reduced by 2% to approximately 86% on the outboard tip. Fuselage is totally built up. Geodetic. You can see the controls are all hidden inside. I believe the fuselage, when I finished it up, weighed about 2.5 to 3 ounces. Originally the tail is a foam core. However, with the Vico 19s I found myself a little tail heavy. I cored them back out, put the geodetic ribs in the tail and in the rudder area. Helped tremendously. Also with the carbon fiber fuel tanks, a little bit different. These weigh approximately 0.45 grams, or ounces. Considerable weight savings there. My own carbon fiber props, these particular ones are 9, 4, and 3/4 props. Extensive, I don't recommend using them, basically the Magnum 28s. The engines require so much work, it's just not worth it for the average person. These particular ones I found that the bore in the case were 1.5 thou oversized. And what I had to do was take the liners out, have them copper plated and turn them back down in order to get the proper fit. Extensive machine work on there, not recommended, definitely. Stay with something that definitely works, and you know that works. That's basically about it.
The best way we could think of to end this segment was to show you a Philly Flyers tradition, the All-Up Club Fun Fly. They had a great time at Brodeck's 1998 fly-in, and so did everyone else. Please come and fly with us this and every Father's Day at John Brodeck's Flying Field of Dreams. Well, welcome back from Carmichael's, Pennsylvania. I hope you had as much fun watching that as we had taping it and living the experience. And I certainly hope that you'll take the opportunity to come and join us this June 18th, 19th, and 20th at the Brodeck Fly-In 1999. You won't regret it. Now it's time to get back to our Project Europa. And what you see here before me are all of the parts that were built for this airplane. And again, we did not show the construction of the wing in this sequence, in this series, because we're going to be covering that in a feature video on lost foam wing construction. So at any rate, everything else in front of me has been built in this series we've been doing in Stunt Flyer Video Magazine over the last few issues, including the stabilizer, which is 1 1/2 ounces. Actually, it's a little under 1 1/2 ounces. And the fuselage crutch here, which has the blocks now removed from it and hollowed. And of course, here are the blocks, and the bottom block and the cowl block. And as I said in the opening of this issue, I believe the three major factors in achieving a good flying model airplane, good flying control line stunt airplane, is lightweight, high horsepower, and perfect alignment. And again, the most important of these in my mind is perfect alignment. Now, I don't have to worry too much about the weight aspect in this airplane, because I just finished weighing all of these components. The wing, complete, ready to go on the airplane with the flaps, control system, tips on, tip weight boxes in place, the landing gear supports are in place, the landing gear mounts are in place, the lead outs are in, lead out guide is in, even the hinges are in this wing. And this wing weighs right in at 8 ounces. And that's pretty good considering it was done with 77,000 sheeting instead of 16th. I probably could have gotten by with 16th on a wing of this size, but I chose to go with the 77,000s as it gives me just a little bit more rigidity here in the leading edge and a little less dipping between the ribs over aging and so forth and so on. At any rate, the wing is complete, and the fuselage and tail and everything together weighs 14 ounces. Now, I still haven't built a fin and rudder for this airplane, or put on a canopy and a pilot, and some of the other gingerbread articles like the push rod and push rod guides and the pipe tunnel supports and all that kind of thing. There's going to be some more weight added to this, but my all-up projected airframe weight, including the landing gear and wheel pants, the airframe weight prior to finishing is going to be 20 ounces. Now, with all the other componentry that I have to put in this airplane, I projected the finished weight, and I projected slightly on the high side just to make sure, is going to be 38.5 ounces. Now, I really feel I could probably even hit 36.5 ounces if I'm careful with finish. I've given myself 8 ounces for finish, and I believe I can probably do that at 6 ounces on an airplane of this size, given some of the new materials we have to work with. So now it's time to take all of these components, which we're going to assume are accurately built. We can't get an accurately assembled airplane if we don't have accurate components to begin with. And we showed in previous issues how to build extremely accurate parts. So we're going to assume that these parts are indeed perfectly accurate, or within very, very close tolerance. So that if we assemble them accurately, then we can be relatively sure of having a good flying straight airplane. So what I'd like to do before we actually get into assembly is show you some of the features of this wing. I want to show you the control system, the wing and the control horn, and how I mount the control horn and the flaps. And there's a particular reason why I do it this way, and a reason why I want to show you. And I also want to cover a little bit more about the fuselage crutch prior to dropping the wing in place. So let's take a moment here and take a look at the wing and the fuselage, and even the stabilizer and elevator prior to assembling all of this into a large, good-looking component. Okay, now here's the wing, and there's a few things on the wing that directly relate to how the airplane will be assembled in a few moments here on tape. Now, we're going to look in the close-up camera and take a look at the control horn mechanism here. Now, we built this control horn in exactly the same manner as we showed in Volume 2, Number 2. We built it in a little fixture in which we brazed it up out of K&S rectangular stock, and used the K&S brass tubing as bearings and soft soldered those in, but we brazed the upright here to the 3/32 inch wire. Now, as you might notice, this is a very high control horn. It's approximately 1 3/8 inches from the pivot point of the horn wire to the output here, or the input from the belt crank. And the reason for that is I want to go with as slow a control system as possible. By going to a very slow setup, it allows us to move the center of gravity a little bit further aft on the airplane and still not have it be oversensitive to the feeling in our hand. So I'm a subscriber to that school of thinking. But because of that, this upright here is actually going to stick up somewhat above the top of the fuselage side when it's installed. And because we're going to be installing the wing upside down in the fuselage, with the fuselage sitting upside down on our bench, that horn would, even deflected, full deflection, is still going to be above the fuselage side, so it would interfere. So for that reason, I have not soldered the push rod to the horn yet. And you can see here that we can take the push rod and pull it off, and now we can fully deflect the horn. And when the flaps are off the airplane, the flaps are not glued onto the airplane at this point, when the flaps are taken completely off of the airplane, now we can you can see we can deflect that horn all the way down if we want, and get it completely out of the way for the assembly of the wing to the fuselage. And this is important that you think about this ahead of time if you're going to be using a very tall control horn, and it will stick up above the fuselage sides in the upright position, and when you turn the fuselage over to put the wing in, it will hit the bench before the fuselage side does. So unless you have the horn arranged in such a manner that you can flip it down out of the way, you might be in trouble. You might actually have to dig a little hole in your bench in order to do the operations we're going to show here soon. Now you can also see that I use little clips here, little plywood clips, to hold the control horn to the trailing edge of the wing accurately. And this allows me to take the flaps off the wing and still be assured that all the geometry of the control system, which was hooked up and the wire was bent for the push rod and so forth, before I even put the center section sheeting on. So I could guarantee myself that the belt crank was perfectly perpendicular to the trailing edge or to the center line of the airplane, and I could get the proper geometry and get the proper amount of movement, equal movement of the belt crank in both directions. And then I bent several push rods, trying to get an exact bend that would give me a centered belt crank when the flaps were absolutely in neutral position. And of course in the lost foam system, it's very easy to ensure that the flaps are neutral, because you can set the wing equidistant from the tabletop in its cradle, both front and back, and then when you put the flaps in, they should also agree with that measurement. Whatever the center line is at the leading edge, it should be at the trailing edge of the wing, and also at the trailing edge of the flaps. So once we have all that aligned and set up perfectly, then I put these clips in place and glue them to the trailing edge of the wing, and they hold the horn bearings, so the horn will be in its proper location for the duration of the airplane's life. And now I can take the flaps off, and I prefer to finish my airplanes with the flaps off so I can get into the hinge lines. And now I can assemble the wing into the fuselage, and then I can bring the flap horn up and connect the push rod, and then solder a washer onto the side of the push rod that's not soldered right now, and have everything that I'm looking for, and not have to worry about any interference when I'm lining the airplane up. Okay, now I have the stabilizer that we built in volume 2, number 1, and it really hasn't changed since that point. I've done nothing to it, I've just put it aside. And you can see here that unlike the wing, even though the elevators are removable, I have not pinned the elevator control horn to the rear face of the stabilizer. And the reason for this is that there's so little room between the fuselage sides at that point that I want to make those clips, those little retainer clips, actually grip to the sides of the fuselage, the inside face of the fuselage crutch. So I'm going to assemble this into the airplane, hook up the control system, and while everything is aligned, I'm going to then put the clips in, the little retainer clips for the horn, and then remove the elevators for finishing. So that's really all we need to talk about here, but it's interesting to note that this stabilizer has remained absolutely flat. It's very accurate, it's very light, and it's going to be an excellent component for this airplane. So that's really all we need to talk about with the stabilizer. Okay, now the last component we need to talk about before we begin assembling is the fuselage crutch itself. Now, I like to move my tanks back as far back towards the CG as I can possibly get them. And for that reason, I found there's no problem in actually cutting a notch in the leading edge of the wing and moving the tank back into that area. Now, Bill Werwich has told me about this for years. He's done this. He's moved the tanks back to where there may be 1/8 of an inch from the front edge of the bell crank. And as long as there's no interference, it's not a problem. And you do then get the center of the mass of the fuel closer to the center of gravity, so when the fuel burns off, you get less of a CG shift from the beginning of the flight to the end of the flight. And I feel this is very important, and for that reason I've moved this weight as far aft as possible. And again, also because I like a further aft CG location these days with the slower control setup. Now, I built this crutch in the normal manner with a full rib cutout to show you how that was done. And if you recall, we showed in Volume 2, Number 3, how to use the section of the lost foam wing that would fit right under the fuselage as a gauge. We cover that with the same thickness sheeting that we use for the wing, and that becomes an accurate plug gauge with which to cut the holes and to check the holes in the sides of the fuselage. So we did that as a full rib when we built the crutch. But now I've actually, as you can see in the close-up camera, I've actually put pieces back in place here because I am going to notch out the wing, and I wanted the tank compartment to be solid back to that point. When I notch the wing out, I'm also going to put little filler pieces at the back of that notch and in either side too, so they have a wood is gripping to wood and not just wood to open air inside the wing. And that will become more clear as we go on. And the only other thing I really want to talk about with the fuselage crutch is the fact that because we tack glued the blocks to here to the top and bottom of this crutch for carving purposes, that when we pop them off, some of the residue of glue from the tack glue joints may be left on the fuselage. And since we want the fuselage to sit absolutely flat upside down on the bench in this fashion here, we want to make sure that there is no glue bumps preventing that fuselage from sitting squarely on the table. So what we're going to do here is we're going to just take a few swipes with sandpaper, sanding block, not too much. We don't want to distort the shapes of the fuselage, but we want to make sure that there's no excess glue sticking up above the surface. And in this case, this is pretty clean, and now it will sit perfectly flat against the bench. The method I chose to use to put the wings in is to cut out a saddle on the bottom of the fuselage. On either side we cut an angled notch, an angled slit, and we take out the saddle piece. Now, as you probably noticed, we've also left formers F3 and F4 solid in here. We're going to be cutting out, obviously, F3 and F4 so the wing can fit into this space. But I'm going to leave pieces of F3 and F4 in the saddle piece to maintain the proper alignment and the proper sizing, so that when we put that saddle piece back in place, it will fit perfectly and we won't have any waves in it or anything. It'll just still be in one section that will fit the fuselage perfectly again. And because we cut the wing out so accurately using that plug gauge, we shouldn't have to trim the saddle either on the top or the bottom in the wing opening area or at the bottom where it glues back in. It should fit perfectly, and I'm betting that it will. So now it's time to put all this together. But before we can do that, it's very important to make sure that the surface you're going to be assembling your airplane on is absolutely flat. It doesn't have to be level, but it does have to be flat. An unflat surface will give you misreadings as you're measuring at the corners and so forth to align the wing and stabilizer. And it will give you an inaccurate airplane. Your airplane is only as accurate as the bench you build it upon. So the first thing I want to do is I want to show you a technique that I use to ensure that my table is absolutely flat. To begin this process, you will need 9 pieces of 1/8 inch thick, 1 1/2 inch square plywood, 4 C-clamps, CA glue, and a spool of black sewing thread. Glue the end of the thread between two of the plywood pieces and then press firmly until cured. Position this assembly at one corner of your workbench and clamp it down securely. Unspool the thread towards the opposite corner of the bench and position it atop a piece of the plywood as shown. Stretch the thread taut and then glue and position another piece of the plywood on top of the thread. Now clamp this assembly to the corner of the bench. Unspool two pieces of thread that are long enough to span from one corner to the other, as shown in this sequence. Grasp the end of one of the two threads and place it under the single clamped thread as shown. At one corner, glue the two threads between two pieces of plywood and then clamp the assembly to the bench. Stretch both pieces of thread tautly at the opposite corner of the bench, and then glue them between two plywood pieces and clamp the assembly to the bench. If the bench is not very close to flat, the single thread will either lift or lower one of the double threads at the center of the bench. Using the remaining piece of 1/8 inch thick plywood as a height gauge, begin checking the bench's accuracy by carefully sliding the gauge under the threads at various places. If the bench is not flat, the gauge will either slide under the threads without touching them, or will move the threads. In either case, the reason is an area that is not flat. If this happens, you will have to loosen or remove the bench top and shim accordingly with thin cardstock shims. This bench has been previously checked and adjusted using this procedure, and it is virtually perfectly flat. Well, isn't that an interesting way to ensure that you have a flat work surface? This workbench that I've been checking for flatness here is made of 3/4 inch thick birch ply. Very high quality, double-faced finished grade plywood. It's very expensive, but the one thing I like about it is that the thickness throughout the entire bench is very consistent. There's not shallow spots and thick spots and so forth. And you do pay extra for that, but it's really worth it. I have this bench mounted, or this top part of this bench, mounted to a solid core door. And that door is about 2 inches thick. And it's also pretty level, or pretty flat, but not perfectly flat. And when I bolted this piece of plywood to it, I did do this method of checking for flatness and found that there were several areas which were low and some areas were high, basically in the corners. And I used file card stock, or a file folder stock, to shim the table at the appropriate points to make sure it was flat. And I find that that file card stock, or that folder stock, is about 20 thousandths of an inch thick per piece of it. And when you put it under the table, it will raise that area approximately 20 thousandths of an inch. So if opposite corners, or 2 corners, are low, you might want to start by unbolting the top piece of your bench, putting a single layer of file folder under each corner, rebolting the bench down, and rechecking with your strings and plywood. It takes a good solid day to bring the average bench to perfect flatness. It took me approximately a full day to get this bench where I was happy with it. And I continue to check this bench periodically to make sure that there's no changes because of temperature or humidity, and it does change. So it's a good idea to check your bench for flatness approximately every 3 or 4 months, or if you're really critical about your building, maybe every month. And it takes a little while, but this bench is in the area we're going to be using, it's within 1,000th or 2 of absolute perfect flatness. This piece of plywood slides right under that thread and just barely touches it. And that's pretty good. I mean, you can't ask for better than that. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to go through the procedures to align the wing in the fuselage. The way I do that is to make a drawing, a top view drawing, showing the fuselage width forward of the wing and a center line on the fuselage, and then a line perpendicular to the center line of the fuselage where I can check the squareness of the wing to the fuselage. And that will become more clear as we go along. So the first thing we're going to do is go to our drafting board and make a little drawing so we can put that on our bench and align our wing and fuselage over that. If you prefer, you can go and get some grid stock paper. Usually you can buy it with 1/8 inch grids, and you can put that on your bench and then use that to line everything up, and that's fine. However, that gets pretty expensive. That paper is very expensive per roll, and I prefer to do a drawing for each airplane that I'm going to be lining up. So let's go do that now. On a piece of thin drafting vellum, draw a long fuselage center line as shown. Measure the width of the fuselage and transfer this measurement to the center line as shown. Now draw in parallel lines which will denote the outside dimensions of the fuselage at the front. Using the fuselage crutch assembly as a gauge, locate and make a tick mark on the center line where the back of the wing will be positioned. Using a large triangle, mark a line perpendicular to the center line as shown. This is the finished wing fuselage alignment drawing. I've laid that drawing out on the bench now and just anchored it down temporarily so I could position the fuselage over the drawing and just get an idea how accurate everything is. And we're pretty close. Everything looks pretty much right on the money. Now, the most important aspects of this drawing are the center line of the fuselage, because as you recall, when we built the fuselage in volume 2, number 1, we put center lines on every one of the formers, and they lined up with the center line on the fuselage fixture. And now, those center lines will lay over the top of this fuselage drawing center line. And since we scribed the line for the trailing edge of the wing absolutely perpendicular to that line, when we drop the wing in place, we should be able to just take a square and line up the wing laterally so it fits into the fuselage squarely in this direction, and everything should be perfect in the other direction. And the reason I say everything should be perfect is, if you recall, in that same volume 2, number 3, we used a section of the lost foam wing for this airplane, the rib section that sits directly under the fuselage side. We covered that rib section, that foam template of that rib section, with the same thickness sheeting that we used to cover the wing. So that should be an identical, perfect replica of the wing at that section. And we used that to lay out and cut out the fuselage sides. When we cut out the fuselage sides, we used this plug gauge, if you will, as an indicator to make sure that everything fit perfectly, that it didn't have any gaps, and that there was no tight points either. It fit just perfectly into that opening on both fuselage sides. So now, when we cut out the fuselage saddle pieces from the bottom and drop the wing in place, theoretically, there should be no need to shim the wing fore or aft for incidents. It should drop in absolutely perfect at the center. And I'm willing to bet it will. Now, in the past, I've used little jig feet, if you will, or fixtures, pinned to the tips at either end, at the root and the tip, and the fore and aft at the root and the tip, to make sure the wing was equidistant from the bench at either end. And of course, those dimensions should then agree with the dimension from the baseline at the fuselage side to the tabletop, both front and back. That was a good way of doing it. But subsequently, I've thought about another way of doing this, and this is how we're going to do it in this issue, is to cover the tip rib from that same lost foam wing with the same thickness sheeting that I used for the wing, and then use that as a template with which to make tip plates more or less like the I-beam type or Detroit type wing tip plates. I've always liked that idea that the Detroit wings were self-fixturing, and that the tips were held in exactly the same relation to the tabletop as the root was. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cover this section of foam, and again make the tip plates and make the center line of the tip plate the same distance from the tabletop as the center line of the wing at the root is from the tabletop, both fore and aft. Now, if you have a lost foam wing, that's very easy to do. If you have a foam wing, it's even easier to do. You just take your foam wing prior to putting on the wingtips, lay it onto a piece of wood and trace around it, and you have your exact template at the tip. If you have a built-up type wing that you built in a manner other than the lost foam system, simply take the tip rib and draw it onto a piece of paper, and then draw the appropriate sheeting thickness onto that drawing, and then you can take and double that till you have a top and a bottom, and then you can use that drawing as a template with which to make the tip plates. But at any rate, I'm going to take this section of the Europa lost foam wing, and I'm going to cover it and make those tip plates right now. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to show the entire procedure of dropping the wing into the fuselage. This operation requires a can of 3M brand 77 spray adhesive, a piece of balsa wing sheeting, and the lost foam tip template. Lightly coat the balsa and the front of the foam template with adhesive, and to aid in bending the balsa around the leading edge curve, lightly spray the outside surface with Windex ammonia formula cleaner. When the glue is tacky, bend the balsa around the leading edge of the foam template. The ammonia in the Windex will help the wood to bend without breaking. Using a sharp number 11 blade, trim the sheeting as shown in this sequence. Now lay out, cut, and glue the remaining pieces of wing sheeting to the foam form. When the template is completely covered, block sand the edges of the balsa flush with the surface of the foam. Cut and install a trailing edge piece that is the same thickness as the actual wing trailing edge cap. Block sand the surface of the sheeting on the template until it is smooth. Measure and make a mark at the center of the template at both the front and rear, and then connect these marks to achieve an accurate center line. Measure down from the top of the fuselage sides and make a tick mark at the wing's center line. Do this on both sides of the fuselage at the front and rear of the wing opening. In this case, the dimension is 1 3/16 inches. Also tick mark the position of the central line on the front and rear of the foam template. Cut 2 tip plate blanks from 1/8 inch thick balsa. These tip plates should be approximately 2 inches longer than the tip cord dimension. Trim one edge of these pieces as shown and mark each one to indicate which edge was trued and where its station will be. Measure up from the baseline on each of the tip plates at both front and rear and make a tick mark which is the same dimension as the center of the wing is from the fuselage top. Again, in this case it is 1 3/16 inches. Scribe an accurate center line between these tick marks. Position the balsa-covered foam template onto the center line of one of the tip plates, leaving approximately the same amount of extra material at both the front and rear, and then very accurately trace the shape of the airfoil onto the plate. Repeat this entire process for the other tip plate. Sharpen the end of a piece of 5/16 outside diameter brass tubing by skiving it as shown with a sharp number 11 blade, and then use it to punch a hole on the center line of one of the tip plates. Using a Dremel type jigsaw, carefully cut out the airfoil shape. Be very careful not to cut outside the line, as this would make the airfoil shape too loose on the wing later on. Using a thin sanding board, carefully smooth the edges of the cutout you just made. Here's how the final fit should look. Repeat the process to finish the other tip plate, and then test fit the plates to their respective ends of the wing. Note that the wing will now sit flat on the bench on the tip plates. Mark the position of the saddle cutouts on both sides of the fuselage. Using a fresh number 11 blade, cut through the balsa side at the saddle cutout locations. Do not try to cut through the plywood doubler beneath. Using a zona saw, cut through the plywood doublers. The knife slits in the balsa will help to guide the saw blade. Repeat this procedure to cut out the opposite side's saddle piece. Now cut through formers F3 and F4 to allow the saddle piece to be removed from the fuselage crutch. Trim the excess portions of formers F3 and F4 from the saddle piece and from the fuselage crutch. Here's the leading edge notch I cut out on my Europa wing as I described earlier. Note, this is not required on most wings. Test fit the fuselage crutch to the wing and mark former F4 where it will need to be clearanced for the push rod. The rear of the wing opening will have to be clearanced for the flap horn. I use a round permagrit sander to notch former F4 for the pushrod clearance. Now measure and mark for the flap horn clearance and use a Dremel tool to make the appropriate cuts. Test fit the wing to the fuselage crutch. Note the virtually perfect fit. Now tape the fuselage wing alignment drawing to the bench as shown. Place the fuselage crutch upside down over the drawing and then use a triangle to be sure that the rear of the wing cutout in the fuselage is directly over the wing trailing edge line on the drawing. When satisfied that everything is accurate, weight the fuselage as shown to keep it from moving. Check all the fits one more time. Now invert and drop the wing into the fuselage. Using a triangle as shown, adjust the skew of the wing until the trailing edge is perfectly lined up over the drawing. Measure from the bench top to the center line of the wing at both front and rear of both sides of the fuselage and at the tip plates. This wing fit perfectly with no adjustments the first time it was checked. If your wing does not fit perfectly, you may have to sand or shim the upper fuselage wing opening to suit. Test fit the wing saddle. It should fit the wing's airfoil curvature perfectly and also fit flush with the bottom of the fuselage crutch. When satisfied with the fit, use aliphatic resin glue to permanently install the saddle and let it dry thoroughly. Again, note the virtually perfect fit. Well, there you have it. That's the method I'm now using to install the wing into the fuselage crutch assembly and pretty much guarantee that it's going to be very accurate. The saddle piece is now drying, and I'm going to let it dry overnight before I unweight this assembly and take the airplane up off the bench and turn it over and glue the wing to the top of the fuselage crutch assembly. I shouldn't have to worry about accuracy at that point because the saddle piece is very accurately glued back to the fuselage where it was cut from. And it's also glued to the wing. So that's now an entire unit that's glued together. And it shouldn't move at all after gluing the top of the wing to the top of the fuselage. If you're really concerned about it, after you glue it, check it one more time. But I think you'll find it's perfectly accurate. We put our drawing on the table first, and that drawing had a center line of the fuselage and a line perpendicular to that at the trailing edge of the wing. And we aligned the trailing edge of the wing to that line when the fuselage was aligned over the center line. And our little Detroiter style or I-beam tip pieces really did the trick. They worked extremely well. And if you recall, we generated these tip pieces from a section of the tip section of the lost foam wing. And now if you're going to use a foam wing, again, you can use the foam wing, just trace around it and generate these tip pieces. Or if you're going to build a built-up wing in some method other than the lost foams method, make sure you trace the tip rib prior to assembly so you can then extrapolate the proper shape at the tip with which to make these tip plates. And I highly recommend their use. They hold the tip on either end a fixed distance from the flat table, and in this case that dimension is 1 3/16 of an inch from the base plate or the base of the table to the center line of the wing at the tip, both front and back, at the other tip, front and back, and the fuselage is also equidistant from the table now. The center line of the fuselage, where the wing cutout is 1 3/16 of an inch from the table to the center line of the wing, both front and back. And all of these dimensions now agree. So the wing has to be in absolutely straight, with no incidence. The leading edge is neither up or down in relation to the trailing edge or to the center line. So you have a perfectly accurately aligned wing in incidence and laterally, and in every other axis, this wing is in about as close as you can possibly do it. And again, you need a flat table before any of this can be done, and we showed how to do that. In the next issue, we're going to come back and we're going to show how to put in a pipe tunnel. Now this airplane will have an SFVM 25 rear exhaust engine in it, and I'm going to be using one of Billy Werwich's 32 size pipes on that. As a matter of fact, the entire power train came from Billy and was used in his Paraquet, which originally had an HP 40 in it and performed very well, but he told me with the OS 25 VF with the pipe, it performed even better, especially in wind. So I have a great deal of confidence in that power package going into the Europa. So we're going to come back next time and we're going to show how to complete the pipe tunnel and put in the floating bell crank mounts and how to seal this area, and then how to put the tail wheel wire into the bottom block, how to install the push rod onto the elevator horn and how to snake it through the fuselage and line that up, and then how to align and glue the stabilizer in just as accurately as we did the wing. Now there's a few tricks to that, and we'll discuss them in the next issue. So that's plenty for this time. For those of you who have never put a wing in this manner, please take some time and review this segment of the how-to series on the Europa several times, and make sure you have it clear in your mind, because of all the different facets of model airplane construction, weight and power and so forth, alignment again is the most important in my mind. And you don't want to have a semi-bomb, an airplane that flies almost all right. You want to have an airplane that flies very all right. So take your time and get this right. I hope you enjoyed this segment, and we'll see you next time. I receive a lot of questions about the different tools that I use in Stunt Flyer Video Magazine building segments. And I also get a lot of questions from people who visit my shop while I'm building and see me using tools that they're not used to. And I pride myself on being able to find some pretty obscure things to use in model building. And I think if you keep your eyes open when you're out shopping at home improvement centers, you can probably find a number of things that you can adapt to your modeling. One of the things that I've adapted from the home improvement houses is the Rigid brand of spindle sander drums. The Rigid company makes an oscillating spindle sander, and you can fit it with a variety of different diameters and different grits of drums. What I have in my hand here is a fairly coarse grit, I think it's 80 grit it says inside, 1-inch diameter drum. I also have a 1-inch diameter 150 grit drum, and then I have the same grits in 3/4 inch diameter drums and also 1/2-inch diameter drums. And you can find even other grits and other diameters if you look hard enough. And again, the name is Rigid brand, and I buy mine from Home Depot. And I'll show their use here in just a moment. Another tool I find very useful are these sanding boards. These are foam-filled sanding boards that are approximately 3/4 of an inch wide and approximately 6 or 8 inches long, 7 inches long, and they have a different grit on either side. One side has about a 150 grit, the other side of this black one has maybe a 100 grit. And they come in a variety of colors. The pink one here is very fine grit, and the somewhat light blue colored one has a more medium grit, and the darker blue gets a little coarser, and again the black ones are the most coarse. And I find these are extremely useful for doing sanding on fuselages and wings, and any place you need to have a very, very light touch and yet get the job done with some accuracy. So we're going to show their use and show them up close here in a minute too. The third tool I want to show you is one I've developed with my dad. This is a 90-degree sanding tool, and it sits on the bench, and you can either bring parts up against it and rub them against it and get a 90-degree sanding surface to the table, or you can move the entire tool itself, as in against a trailing edge of a foam wing or a lost foam wing is how I use it, to true up the trailing edges, and I find it indispensable. Now, this is made from a piece of aluminum extrusion, and it's 2.5 inches high and 1.5 inches wide. And when you buy this aluminum extrusion, you've got to be careful because it's not square. The edge is not square to the base. The side is not square to the base. And it needs to be trued up in a milling machine prior to using it for the purpose we've just described. Now, my dad and I have decided to make this available in various lengths as a sanding tool. And by the time you see this tape, this should be available, and you can call up Robbins View Productions and get a price on this. But it should be under $10. But this is an indispensable tool for my building, and I highly recommend that either you purchase one or make one of your own. But again, be sure to make sure that it's a perpendicular tool. Otherwise, you would be sanding an angle into pieces. So make sure that the front face is perpendicular to the table. Now I'd like to show you these sanding tools in action and show you their uses in model building. The Rigid brand spindle sanding drums are perfect for smoothing concave surfaces like the inside of this balsa cowling. These flat, foam-filled sanding bars come in several grits and are ideal tools for detail sanding of finished assemblies. The Robbins View Productions right angle sander is fitted with a handle and can be slid back and forth against the bench to ensure that a wing's trailing edge is perfectly straight and square. Or it can be used to square up sheets or blocks for accurate part making. Well, there you have three very useful sanding tools. This 90-degree sanding bar will be available from Robbins View Productions very shortly. You can purchase the Rigid brand spindle sanding drums from Home Depot or any of the home improvement stores in your area. And those flat sanding bars can be purchased from an industrial manicurist supply or beauty supply. Now, if you can't find those and there's enough of a demand, I'll stock them in some kind of quantity and I'll distribute them also through Robbins View Productions. So now you have three new tools with which to make your airplanes look even better. Well, as promised in the editorial, we're back now to talk a little bit about the reconstruction or the refinish and the restoration of Bob Tucker and Gary Zeller's Tucker 4. I say Bob Tucker and Gary Zeller because Bob did design this airplane, but Gary Zeller campaigned it. In doing some more research on that, I found out that Gary flew this airplane for 4 years, from 1962 to 1966. And in that time frame, I understand he won over 42 first-place trophies with the airplane. And in some cases, he won 2 a day. He would fly at one contest in the morning in Missouri, and then cross the river and fly in the afternoon at a contest in Illinois. And in that way, he was able to win 2 first-place trophies in stunt in one day with this airplane, and I understand he did it on several occasions. What I'm doing here is documenting the trim scheme on the airplane. I'm making very accurate drawings of all the numbers and all the trim, and also the proximity of the trim, these numbers, to the trailing edge and leading edge and tip. I'm actually making a mark around the wing on this drawing so I can locate and put these markings back on the airplane in their original condition. So when we refinish it, it really truly is a replica of the airplane. This airplane, when I first received it from Lou and Marge Zeller 3.5 years ago, really looked big to me for a 35 size airplane. And I had it in my mind that this airplane was someplace in the neighborhood of 53 to 54 inches of wingspan. But imagine my surprise when I measured it here and found out that it was 50.5 inches of wingspan. It's quite a bit smaller than I thought it was. And the only reason I can think of that I thought it was bigger than that is the fact that it's got a high degree of taper. It's extreme leading edge taper and quite a bit of trailing edge taper, and the tips get very narrow. And because of that, the airplane does appear to have a longer span than it actually does. It's got an extremely wide root chord. The root chord of the wing without the flaps is 12 1/8 inches, and that's very wide. And the flaps are an additional 3 to 3 1/4 inches, I believe, or flap root chord is 3.5 inches. So that's an extremely wide wing. It's over 15 inches wide for a 35 size airplane, which accounts for its stability it was reputed to have. This airplane was built in the Detroit style I-beam wing, and most of the airplanes from that era built in that style had leading edge sweep and trailing edge sweep. They were double taper wings, so they tapered in planform and thickness in 2 ways. And again, the designer, Bob Tucker, put an extreme amount of sweep in this airplane, and I guess he knew what he was doing because apparently from all accounts I've heard, the airplane did outfly the legendary Tucker Special. And the Tucker Special, I had one, and I know how good a flying airplane it was. So if this airplane flies even better, we're in for a treat when we get the plans done and we start building these. The Tucker series of airplanes, the Tucker Special and the Tucker 4, the outlines of them were inspired by the Schneider Cup racers from the late 20s and early 30s, the pontoon type racers. And the Tucker Special, its outlines are very reminiscent of the Mach-E series of Schneider Cup racers with the sub-rudder and the Italian Mach-Es. And this particular airplane, the Tucker 4, is more designed around the looks of the Supermarine series of Schneider Cup racers. Now, none of those airplanes had a large degree of paint trim on the wings, and because of that, this airplane is basically pretty stark trim-wise, but it has a certain elegance to it even without all that trim. It's done in the metallic blue, just like the Supermarine series of racers was done, and it does have the vertical red, white, and blue stripe on the rudder as they had, and I think Gary and Bob agreed to add a little bit more color to this one in the form of A4 on the upper left-hand wing and Gary's numbers on the right wing in Diana Cream. They also have a nice stripe down the side of the fuselage and some Diana Cream very thin stripes to outline the ailerons and elevator trim tab locations. So even though it doesn't have a lot of trim on it, what trim is here is very elegant and adds to the flavor of the airplane. And an airplane with this much character to its outline really doesn't need a whole lot of trim to bring it out. You can see this airplane has some really nice features aesthetically. It has this long dorsal headrest which goes up into the vertical fin, and it has an open cockpit here and a very nice plastic canopy, again outlined in Diana cream, and it had a pilot in it originally, but it fell out, and I'll have to put a recreation of that pilot in. And has these long thin wheel pants on it, and they have a little trim on them. And the airplane is also surprising, as was the span. The weight of the airplane is surprising. I felt it was going to be quite a bit heavier than it really is. Now, I haven't weighed it, but I can tell you from just picking it up and having picked up airplanes of its size, this is fairly light. This is approximately 38 to 40 ounces, but I'd guess it's under 40 ounces really. And it was powered by a Fox 35. So we know that you know, it was a good flying airplane with a Fox, and it really couldn't have been too heavy, and it really couldn't have been all that large either. But I think Bob has achieved what a lot of us are looking for, to get a big look on a small airframe. So it flies well, but it still looks like it's a much larger airplane than it really is. I mentioned it had a Fox in it. It also has a genuine spun aluminum Froome spinner on it, and an old Top Flight 10.6. Now this engine is locked up from years of not having the caster cleaned out of it, and I'm not going to even try to turn it over. I'm going to give it to my friend Tom Hampshire and let him soak it and rebuild it. And then we'll put it back in the airplane. Interesting to note, it has a what appears to be a flexible, either a perfect style or maybe an early OS Max needle valve assembly rather than the Fox needle in it. I'm going to take a little bit of time here now and show you some of the close-up details of this airplane. And even though the airplane is in pretty bad shape as far as cracks and drying out and splits and so forth, you'll still be able to see the outstanding workmanship. I saw pictures of this airplane when it was brand new, and the finish was just amazing. It was an extremely high gloss finish, and it still shows elements of that finish here, even after the number of years, over 35 years of sitting around. So it's still a beautiful airplane, and hopefully we can bring it back to pristine condition. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of the tissue paper that's covered with this what appears to be Aerogloss metallic blue, and take it to a auto body paint store and have them do their color match. They have a computer color match now, and they can analyze any color and then duplicate it in acrylic lacquer. And what I'm going to do is have them duplicate this color, and I'm going to use a lot of plasticizer when I recoat the color. And the reason for that is I'm not really concerned about the weight anymore, because this airplane is never going to be flown again. This particular airplane is going to be refinished back as close as possible to pristine condition, and then donated, as we said, to the AMA Museum in honor of Bob Tucker and in memory of Gary Zeller. So I don't want it ever to split again and get all these holes in it and have all this crazing. So I want to make sure we put plenty of plasticizer in the color so it will last a long time at the museum when you go to see it. So again, let's take a moment now, and I'm going to peel. I really hate to do this. I'm going to turn the airplane over and peel some of the covering back so you can see some of the construction inside the airplane. It's really amazing, the detail and the fit in this airplane. I've looked through some of the holes in the covering, and I'm really truly amazed at the workmanship in the airplane. And I think you will be too. So let's take just a moment now and look at some of the features of this Tucker 4. Here's a good shot of the nose of the Tucker 4, and you can see the trim as it comes up there over the cowling, and you can also see the flexible needle valve I was telling you about, and of course the Froome spinner. And it looks like the Froome spinner has a little different nose piece on it than the stock nose piece, because it's a different color. And you can see that the prop is streaked with oil. That's actually not a laminated prop, that's just oil streaks from use and from years. And you can see the typical tank venting of the era, where the two tank vents came out and one went straight forward and the other one up above the level of the fuel in the tank. And you can see the has a connection hose there so we don't get leakage. And again, the opening for the Fox 35, they didn't use mufflers in those days or even exhaust manifolds. And it's surprising that this airplane doesn't have more burn around the exhaust outlet. Most of the airplanes of that era had a tremendous amount of burn from the exhaust constantly hitting the wood. Here's the cockpit area, and you can see the really nicely contoured dorsal headrest. Actually runs as a dorsal fin as it nears the rudder. And you can see on the wing, again, the splits in the silk span and how badly this airplane is deteriorating over time. And it's really a shame because it was a beautiful airplane. It has a clear plastic canopy, and I don't think I'm going to be able to salvage the stock canopy. It's really crazed and pitted, and I'm going to use it as a form to create a new one. This is a good shot of where the dorsal headrest actually becomes a fin, and you can see the amount of offset, which appears to be about 1/2 an inch, between 3/8 and 1/2 an inch of offset. And you can clearly see in this shot the cloth hinges that were used. And again, we'll use cloth hinges on the airplane when we refinish it. And we want to document the exact width of those stripes on the rudder too. This is a section of the inboard wing, the bottom of the inboard wing. And you can see we've taken some of the covering off, and it just peeled clean off the ribs in most cases here. I'm pretty sure we'll be able to get all this covering off very cleanly. It didn't leave much residue on the ribs at all, and what's there I can just soak with a little bit of solvent and take off. You notice that unlike many I-beam wings, this particular I-beam has the ribs notched to fit over the spar, where most of the I-beam wing type models have ribs that lay on top of the spar. And I'm not exactly sure why Bob did this, but you can just imagine the amount of craftsmanship it took to get each rib notched perfectly and to fit into shape the way he got them to. You can also see the landing gear mount on the spar, and you can see the solid lead-outs attached to the 3-inch bell crank. Like most stunt flyers, I really like airplanes that have wheel pants on them. I think it gives them a very finished and classy look. And unless it's a jet style airplane, almost any airplane will look better, I think, with wheel pants, whether it be a racing style airplane or a early 30s type airplane, which this is. Now, these don't in any way simulate the shape of the actual pontoons that were on the Schneider Cup racers, but they are very, very stylish and classy looking wheel pants. And inside the wheel pant he has an early version of the Williams Brothers wheels, and they're very narrow. These wheel pants really give a feeling of length to the airplane when you look at it from the side. Here's another view of the front end, again showing that oil-stained prop and the Froome spinner. And again, you can see in the wing how much damage there is to the airplane and how much crazing there is on the silk span. It's really a shame because this was a truly beautiful airplane. Here's a good look at a wingtip of the Tucker 4. And again, you can see the splits in the silk span. You can also see how the flaps curve into the shape of the wingtip, and it was a very well-formed wingtip. The actual ribs going fore and aft in the tip were tapered down in thickness, so it gave a nice parabolic shape as viewed from the front to the wing covering. A lot of attention to detail in the shapes on this airplane. Here's one more look at one of the items on the airplane that gives it a tremendous amount of character, and that's the dorsal headrest, which goes back into the dorsal fin. And also in this shot you can see the amount of sweep forward in the trailing edge. There's a tremendous amount of sweep in this wing. In this view you can really see the taper in the wing. And you can also see how all the shapes work together to give it that look of a Schneider type racer. The long wheel pants, the dorsal headrest and dorsal fin, the rudder, the curvature of the flaps into the wingtips, the distinctive cowling shape which drops straight down after it comes off the spinner, most of the airplanes from that era had very swoopy looking curved back cowlings with multiple curvatures in them. This airplane went straight down, and again it emulates the racing type look of the airplanes of the late 1930s. Well, it was a beautiful airplane, wasn't it? And it will be again. The finish is really the only thing that needs to be restored. The shapes on this airplane are timeless. The beauty and character of it make it a true classic, and one which I'm sure will be built by many, many people once the plans are made available, especially if it flies as good as I hear it flew. That's our first progress report. Actually, that's just telling you what we're going to do, and we're going to document this airplane thoroughly, taking lots and lots and lots of still 35mm pictures of every aspect and every detail on the airplane from every conceivable angle. Because later on, if I'm not sure of exactly how something looked, I can always look at one of the pictures or some video and remember how it looked and get it accurate. So if you're ever contemplating restoring an airplane, make sure you take rolls and rolls of film of it before you do any restoration work, and that way you can be sure you're going to get it back to original condition. That's plenty for this time. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll come back next time, hopefully have this thing completely documented and stripped down, and we'll be doing the plans at that point, trying to get the plans done so we can get this to Flying Models magazine and get it published so you can build it for Classic Stunt out at Tucson. I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you next time.